going on YouTube? Hope you are having a great day as always. In this video, I would like to share with you a podcast which was recently held with Ajeet Kaur, who is a singer, songwriter, performer extraordinaire, and she is a beautiful human being inside and out. And we had a wonderful conversation ranging from the production process and the creation of her music, her art form by way of song, dance, and all sorts of other different things. We covered meditative practices, we covered the masculine and feminine energies. We covered all sorts of different stuff that I think you'll really enjoy. So if you're interested in receiving more of these content updates, hit that notification icon on this channel so that you can stay informed, and also visit the podcast itself, which is wetheaether.com or instagram.com/wetheaether. All links are in the description below as always. But without further ado, I leave you with my conversation with Ajeet Kaur, and I hope you enjoy. Hit this video with a thumbs up if you do, hit it with a follow, and hello. Thanks for watching.
How's it going?
Pretty good. So I assume you can hear me. That's good.
I can. Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah. You're loud and clear.
Oh, good.
So it's nice to speak. Finally, we haven't spoken in a long time.
Yeah, definitely. It's been a while.
Last time I saw you was your concert. Must have been a couple of years ago, I think. I was with Grace, and we spoke after your concert briefly. But I know you have some coming up as well, one in Toronto in September, is that right?
Yeah, it's in November, I believe.
Oh, November, okay. Cool, yeah. So I'll probably be seeing you at that one as well.
That would be great, yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to be putting a portion of this on YouTube, maybe the whole thing, and trying to push some of that traffic and whatnot to the podcast. But for the most part, I think most of the listeners are audio.
Okay.
Video is something I've just started doing because actually you're familiar with Raghu Marcus from Love Serve Remember?
Yes.
He's the director of the foundation.
Yeah.
I had a call with him, actually a podcast with him, and he suggested to do video, and he kind of put me onto the idea. So I figured, okay, it's probably something I should be doing. And then I actually spoke with Lama Surya soon after that. So and I've even had a call with Ram Dass as well, but I didn't record that, and it wasn't like it wasn't a podcast. It was just one of those one-on-one calls. So it was really lovely, anyways. But
cool.
It's all kind of within your realm, within your state.
Yeah.
So I figured,
yeah, definitely.
Pretty neat. And that's why I actually reached out to you as well, because I figured it would just be very in line with those other podcasts. And it seems like a lot of the listeners really like that type of content, that material. And just to diversify things, because I think that the spiritual side of stuff is really important to highlight. But then also having, like, I've had some health and fitness people on and other guests. So just to have some diversity there is pretty neat. So I think you bring a really nice perspective with what you do. So just to kick things off, do you mind just introducing yourself and explaining briefly what it is that you do?
Sure. Well, I'm curious, are you all right with these big headphones? I thought we were just doing audio, so I don't know if you want me to get...
However you want to look.
Got my, like...
Yeah. I think they look fine. It's up to you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm fine with it. Just whatever works for you. So, yeah, my name is Ajeet, and I make mantra music and world music. It's always hard for me to define what the genre is per se, but I would say just mainly my music is with the intention of creating a space that people can connect deeper to their own inner world. And I definitely find that music is my way of connecting deeper in myself. And so my music having that kind of role in other people's lives, I feel is just an unfolding of that being my own way of connection.
That makes sense. And what's the particular, is it a particular style of music that you sing? I mean, personally, I know that it's kirtan is pretty popular, but many people aren't aware of what kirtan is. Would you be able to just briefly kind of explain what that is for people that might not be too familiar with it?
Yeah, well, I write a lot of songs and do kind of music with an influence from a lot of different places, but I did get started with this style of music by doing kirtan, which is more of a devotional kind of call and response, often style of music that originates from India. and is really a meditative practice with sound and chanting. Mm-hmm. So that's definitely a part of my own kind of practice and background. But I also grew up singing Irish music, and I grew up in a family that sings all the time and kind of lives through songs and experiences life through songs and passes down stories through songs. So I also feel that that's really present in my own relationship to music. So the recordings I've made are kind of a combination of those two rivers meeting, those two different aspects of my own experience. My own original connection to music came from different places, and so it kind of melds into something new.
Yeah, something very new. Actually, something very unique as well from everything I've heard of your music. And do you find that it's something that's constantly evolving and constantly just changing over time?
Completely, yeah.
As your life progresses, the experiences you have and everything, it sort of just starts to integrate those things into, because I know you're working on some new stuff as well, and you're working on an album, which we can talk about shortly. But I just wanted to find out, so as you progress through life, do you see an evolution in the production of your music and the style in which you sing and just everything really about it?
Completely, yeah. I think it's one of the things that I love about being an artist or being a musician is that, you can constantly be exploring your own heart, your own being, your own way of doing this thing that is so massive of creating music. There's so many ways you can go with it. So it's something I love about the process, really, to keep exploring and keep going deeper and finding new ways of expressing through sound. But then it's also something that's kind of like a scary part of it, because you kind of develop a relationship with the people who listen to your music, and I really feel that I want people to be able to continue enjoying it. And so it's always a process for me of really staying aligned with where I am and feeling free to explore. And then also you never know how everyone else will feel about that, but for me it's really about staying true to what I'm experiencing in that moment. And I've found that people are really willing to go with that. So yeah, it's a really interesting part of it all, to just keep following that creative call wherever it leads, and just really trust that.
And it is really a trusting process, because you're just opening yourself up to people in such a way and just allowing everyone in, really, and to be part of your creative process and to join that evolution. So do you find at times that you sometimes, I guess you kind of cover that, but in a way you're almost a little bit nervous or hesitant to really reveal your truth in that way to people? Do you feel any or notice or have an awareness of any fear behind that you have to get past and get through in order to express yourself in such a creative way and in such a truthful way?
Yeah, for sure. I feel like as you keep going deeper in different levels and different layers, and sometimes it's a little like, oh, I don't know if I want to go that deep. I want to, explore that new space in myself. And this album that I'm working on now, I felt that a lot. Like when I first played one of the first songs I wrote for the album, I played it for my band, and it's just two people who I know so well. They're like family, and I sing in front of them most days of my life, and my hands were shaking. I was like so nervous because it felt like just totally opening up a part of myself and saying, okay, now come on, have a look inside. And certain songs I feel are just, they come from a place that's very intimate, and so then it's a really interesting process to start sharing it with the world in a way that's so big and share it with a lot of people, but still keep that sense of intimacy.
It's really nice you have those band members that you can share that with. It's almost like a little spiritual community, like a satsang or a sangha, where you can open yourself up to them prior to doing so to the rest of the world. Almost like trial it there, get their opinion, get their feedback, and really just give yourself that opportunity to had that experience of sharing prior to going out and performing in front of, you know, an audience of people, where that could be a little bit nerve-wracking, I'm sure. Personally, I've never done it. I'm not much of a, I haven't tried much singing myself, but you know, I can only imagine, like, I've done speaking in front of people, and that alone can be somewhat daunting at times. So
yeah,
singing, definitely so.
Yeah, and like at that moment, when I first showed it to them and I was so nervous, we were doing a concert in front of like 1,000 people that night. So I sang it in front of 1,000 people
that same night. Wow.
Night.
Yeah.
But at least I had this, my first time, I was probably even more nervous just showing it to them. Because as soon as they were on board with it, we're like together in it. But somehow, or some moments when I go somewhere and it's just like me and my guitar or something, it does feel really different without that. You're right. It's like a community. The band is such a family, and it definitely changes that feeling of feeling nervous. It's really rare for me that I feel nervous during a concert, or yeah, it's probably mostly just if I'm sharing something really new that feels really vulnerable and intimate.
Now, is that something that it eventually progressed to being that way, where initially when you were first starting out with your singing career and really getting in front of an audience, you did have a little bit more anxiety, whereas now it's just become so natural to you, it's part of your just process, it's part of what you do, so to speak?
Yeah, I think it has to do with how I was introduced to music, and especially to singing. Because my way of being introduced to it wasn't so much as a performance. And so when I was really young, I was already singing a lot in front of groups, because like my family in Ireland actually is really into the sean-nós tradition of singing, which is this kind of storytelling in Irish. And so at the end of every meal, everybody gets up and one at a time shares either a poem or a song. And goes around the whole table. It takes like a few hours, you know, to get through everybody. And so those are my first kind of experiences of singing in front of people, were in these, or also in Irish sessions where it's like a group of 15 musicians or something. Then the audience is also the band, you know, the people listening are also the musicians. And I would just maybe sing a song in the middle of the session as other people were, you know, like between songs, and then also with the kirtan world. And my mom was a yoga teacher, so when I was pretty young, I was already in these situations where people were doing a lot of this devotional singing. So I think the combination of those two things, singing and music, has always just been this like really fun community way of sharing space together and expressing yourself and enjoying each other. So I think that is probably a big part of why I don't feel nervous so much, because it doesn't feel so much like a performance. It feels like, just that celebration of life. That is
you almost
really
feel
fun.
like you're in a performance when you're not singing. If that's the case, it's almost as if when you're in your singing mode, when you're singing, when you're in that state,
completely
you are expressing your truth in that way. When you're not singing, when you're just walking about the world dealing with, you know, business matters of concerts, of this and that, do you find that that's almost more of a performance for you, where you're almost having to, it's not as natural? Because it sounds like you were raised completely within this environment of you know, just openness and being able to express yourself.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've never thought of it that way, but it's definitely true.
It's just a way of flipping it. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I love that. Yeah, I definitely feel that way. That I think when I'm playing music is the most natural space for me, and I just feel there's nothing. You know, there's no worry, there's no thought, there's no anything. There's just music, and it's really a relaxing space.
Your heart is completely open at that point.
Yeah, it's just there's no effort. It's a really, really special space. And so then, the rest of life can sometimes, in contrast, have a lot of effort involved.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm grateful to have the balance of being able to kind of take a vacation in that world of music.
And it's something like your tone and how you sing in particular. I find that when I listen to it personally, I find that it's almost as if you're, through just opening up and getting out of the way, you're allowing that to flow through you. I don't know if you would refer to it as your own. The only way I could think is your own truth, your own. I like to see divinity within every individual being, and I post a lot about that stuff as well. And sometimes I don't know if people look at it and go, "What the hell is this guy talking about?" But really, I think that people tend to get in the way of their own expression, and if you're on stage in that way and opening yourself up, it is like you're just freely flowing, like you're just open like a river, and it's all just coming out and it's just going. And everyone that's in that space with you can really just take that nourishment and get that refreshment from that river. And it's something that's altruistic in a way, that because you're really bringing someone into that realm with you, and bringing someone into that space of truth. And it's just, I think that's why you've done so well personally. And from me listening to your music, that's what drew me into it, is just the fact that it kind of allows me to step aside, allows my own ego to step aside, and allows me to get into that space with you and just kind of enjoy the ride, almost like riding the wave. And it's really, really nice. It kind of, everything of the world gets set aside, and I can just listen and enjoy and just be in that resonance. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And I'm really happy to hear that can happen.
I'm assuming that's why you do a lot of what you do.
Yeah.
It really does help people. It's a way of universal healing by way of expression. So
yeah. And I think just this moment in the world and everything that's happening, life can be so stimulating and very intense. And so it feels like a moment that having music that can give you an experience of that, like, exhale, just to, even if it's just the length of a song or, a couple minutes, I feel like just to have something that takes you into a more relaxed space is really important. And so, there's a lot of times that I think I would like to be doing more to, be really active in some of the aspects of what's happening in our world, politically and environmentally, and these things that I feel really strongly about. But then at the same time, I think, the most important thing I can do is create music that can create a relaxing, still space to kind of counteract the intensity.
Right. Yeah. I made a post, I made an Instagram post earlier today, which was basically that piece exists in the silence, or the space between the thoughts. So there's just so much information, so much happening, like so many devices, so many different things. And it's like thought. And there's no space, there's no gap. And people can be doing that thought for days, weeks, months, years, and they never are out of it. So I think it's just so important to highlight people such as yourself that really bring people out, to kind of take them out, at least for an instance, to let them know that there's something else there, some other form of experience, some other dimension which they can, reside in, that's a little bit more, in my opinion, a little bit more real, a little bit more in tune with what's real, as opposed to, all the visceral things that they experience in their day-to-day life.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, and there are a lot of ways to do that. And like, I feel talking to you and, knowing a bit from your Instagram and your following, like I definitely get a lot as well from like my morning run and going outside and being in the trees and the air. And then like, I love going, when I'm home, I get to go on my paddleboard when it's nice weather. And, it seems like small things, but it's huge to take space in the day to just go and kind of reset and connect back. I think nature is an amazing way of doing that, of really resetting. And I think of my music as kind of like, if you're not able to take that space to go outside or go for a swim or whatever that is, I try to make music that maybe feels like what that would feel like. Create a song that would, when I listen to it, I feel refreshed in the way that I would feel if I went for a hike. So who knows if it's successful, but that's the goal.
Yeah, I think being in nature is super important. It's something I I didn't think I would get so into, like when I was younger, I wasn't really, I mean, I used to live like in the core of the city. Actually, I think I don't know if I was living there when we first met, but I was right in the middle of Toronto, and it's just like chaotic, just people everywhere. And it was just too much to handle. Almost like I found like almost like there was an interference. Like if I tried to experience that peace, there's just like an interference, some sort of like, I don't know, psychic interference of some sort, but it's just like not enough trees and too many people equals interference to me. So I feel like I've slowly just regressed and started moving further and further away from the city. Even right now, I'm moving further and further away because I just want more space. I just want to go and be outside and be like Tarzan all the time, because I find like it's just much more peaceful for me, especially being in this like technological space, and we're doing these podcasts and all this crazy stuff. It's like there needs to be such balance, and I think a lot of people don't experience it, and that's partially why I share a lot of the content I do. And I'm slowly going more in that direction, especially with this podcast, because I find like this is an outlet for me, much like singing would be for you. This is almost like a spiritual outlet for me. And I personally, it's funny, we briefly talked about that fear. I personally experience that sometimes when I'm about to express something or express an idea or philosophy or anything else, because so many people have different views and different opinions that, you know, it's almost like projecting that potential judgment on whatever I'm posting. So it's almost like when I post something, sometimes I just do it and let it go. Like, it's just like, just get the message out, let it go. Whatever happens, whatever it may be, it'll be. And I find, especially as a male in this society, to have such a balance of expressing like a feminine energy is really important as well. To have like a strong masculine energy, but to also balance it so much so with like a feminine one that I just find that that's the way to live, to be honest, just to have that balance. And I find a lot of people aren't really one side or the other. They're not really focusing too much on getting there with the balance. But that's basically my objective with posting the content and doing what I do, and especially with this podcast. So.
Yeah, and I feel like I'm thinking, as you're saying, like sometimes you feel nervous sharing certain posts. Like I've definitely felt that too. And sometimes if I'm like reflecting on something that feels kind of personal, and like you're saying, maybe other people might have different opinions or something. Often that is actually the things that I write or sing that get the most response from people, and like that people really feel the most are the things I think maybe I won't even say that.
Right. Yeah. That's pretty funny.
I think there's something about that feeling of like hesitation or almost a little bit of fear or a little bit of like discomfort with being vulnerable that actually can be a sign of like what art is. You know, I think what is the difference between like writing an Instagram post and creating like a piece of art in terms of, you know, a poem or a book or something, some collection of words that we would consider art. I feel like a lot of that, from my perspective, would be something that that feels that way, that feels like it's really expressing something vulnerable and deep. And sometimes you hesitate before going there. Yeah.
And I've personally, I mean, through my own experiences, I've noticed a shift in even men that I know, their willingness to open up and share content that's more on the feminine energy side, let's say, which is really great. Because for me, it's like I love to post the strong lifting stuff, all this and that. It's all just like a masculine expression in a way. But then to also have these like quotes, and also to have interviews like with people such as yourself who represent such a strong feminine energy, that I think it's almost like it shows people how they can then do that themselves, how they can then open up without fear and express things on their own. People often will ask me if they can repost things I post or share things I post. I'm like, please, by all means. That's the point, you know, like do it. So, I think that, you know, I think that's why it's great to have conversations like this, that we can really just start to introduce people more to that balance.
Totally, yeah.
So I did have a question as well about Kundalini Yoga, because I know you practice that as well, and you've held some, is it like seminars, or how are those? Is it seminars you hold?
Yeah, well, I do workshops and retreats and different settings.
Okay, so could you describe Kundalini Yoga? Because a lot of people might even think that's like some sort of smoothie because they don't know what the heck Kundalini is. So
it could be a great smoothie, actually.
It sounds like it could be. There'd probably be some like kale in there, I'd imagine.
Definitely. Yeah. Kundalini yoga, it's hard to describe. It's a very kind of holistic form of yoga. It involves breathing, so pranayam, and mantras, and asana, or physical postures. So it's, instead of like, you know, certain types of yoga are very asana based or very breath based, or Kundalini yoga really has a pretty strong balance of all of these different aspects, and also a pretty strong balance between the physical body and doing things with your physical body, and a more meditative practice. Mm-hmm. So a class would almost be like half and half of physical asana, and then a relaxation or shavasana, and then doing really a lot of meditation. So I've really loved being a part of that practice. I grew up with Kundalini yoga because my mother is a Kundalini yoga teacher. And the practice has really served me a lot over the years, just as a way to maintain all those levels, you know, really the health of my physical body at certain moments has been especially important. It's interesting, Kundalini yoga has all these different kriyas, or different sets of exercises, and each of the kriyas is for something different. So if you're dealing with something really specific, you can go to a yoga set that's, you know, for the kidneys, or for healing the spine, or, you know, different topics, whatever that is you're looking for. Mm-hmm. And
so is it like a way of opening up blockages, say, so that you have a kind of a free energetic flow throughout the body? Is that you can focus on a specific area that needs healing?
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of the sets would be kind of through moving in that way, like opening up, and often they'll kind of start at the bottom of the body and doing exercises to loosen things up and move any blocks, and then slowly working their way up, so that you're not just like meditating, constantly trying to be in a perfect state of peace and just live in those like upper three chakras. You know, we all have the possibility of falling into that. Trying to be like ultra high and not deal with any of the mucky stuff. Mm-hmm. But I think that's one reason I really love the yoga sets, or the kriyas, because it's just built into it. You know, you do each of the exercises, and they are pretty balanced in that way, that you don't just hang out up in the
clouds,
fancy space.
Yeah. And I find like a lot of that's sort of the extreme end, is the people that are up in that space all the time, and they're all just walking around, you know, like it's almost I think it's important to sort of be in the world in a way as well, in order to just function on this level, on this plane, and also in order to actually meet people on this plane, and then maybe help bring them up to those other planes, and those other spaces. Because I find some people, they are just too much head in the clouds all the time, and it's like, hey, come down, meet me here.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Especially when, I'm sure you experience it a lot too, with a lot of people that are involved with kirtan and people that go to the concerts and everything like that, which is understandable, I'm sure. It almost reminds me of people that tend to do a lot of psychedelic drugs or tools. They have different tools that they like to use to escape. Mm-hmm. It's almost to escape what, you know, like it's like to escape what? It's almost, I feel like, when I was speaking with Lama Surya not too long ago, we were talking about great naturalness, natural great perfection, and seeing it as it is, and just sort of seeing that heaven on earth sort of thing. As you move about, the second you open your eyes in the morning, you should just have that wakefulness, you know, in both senses of the word, wakefulness and awareness. And I think it's important to have that, and not just sort of walk around, again, head in the clouds, because it's hard to communicate sometimes to those people. And I find that tends to alienate those people, alienate a lot of the people that are very not there yet, you know, and it's a separation, where I think that, you know, there's a nice middle ground people could meet at. But hopefully, again, conversations such as this will open people's minds and perceptions to you know, alternate ways of expressing themselves and being with others. And,
yeah, totally. Yeah, I think anytime that you have that feeling like, oh, I've found the thing that works, and if only everybody else could find this great thing, I think that's the moment to really like turn the mirror around and look at yourself, because that, I think, that is a tendency in spiritual practices to feel that, you know, one practice is kind of above everything else, and it could just help everybody, and that kind of alienating thing that you're talking about. And
I think it just creates more separation, when I think that the whole point of the whole thing is unity, right? So I think it just creates, you know, oh, I do this practice, I do this practice, I do that practice. It's like, well, they all lead to the same general understanding.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think just paying attention to our own way of being in spiritual practice and spiritual community is really important, because I've found spiritual practice to be really helpful, and meditation and yoga practice to be so helpful. And then also I feel that it's really important to have those balancing other balancing factors in life, like really maintaining your being an active person in your community, and, you know, keeping on top of your money or your whatever it is, you know. What good is it if you've got this beautiful space in your mind, but you're walking around so spaced out you're bumping into people? You know, I think it's really important that we be engaged in our world. And if we really, you know, a lot of the things that I think spirituality teaches can only really be practiced if we are grounded as well as expansive.
Oh, I love the way you just described that, especially just being engaged in the world. It's very true. So touching on that, on actually what you just said, do you have any set specific meditative practice outside of Kundalini Yoga, outside of singing? Do you do anything, let's say transcendental meditation, or even just something like Surya described in an earlier podcast, just sky gazing, just going out, staring up at the sky and just, you know, completely openness? And just, I personally love staring at treetops. I could do that for forever, like just watching them sway in the wind. But did you have any practice that you apply?
Well, definitely being in nature, I would consider a practice. For me, it's like my soul starts slipping away if I go too long without that time being out in nature. So it can be you know, challenging while traveling a lot and touring. We go to cities for playing concerts, so we're just city after city, and so I always really try to just get out in the different countries we go to and see the beauty of nature, because it's incredible what our world has, you know, and how that can affect us to come back to that beauty of the natural world. I feel like it's incredibly healing and resetting. And then also, there are different traditions that have really helped me. I love practicing Buddhist meditation, silent meditation, and especially Tibetan Buddhist meditation has been really nice for me to explore and experience. And then also within the world of yoga, I really love lots of different styles of yoga, but Ashtanga yoga has been something that has been kind of present throughout my life since I was very young. So I like that, you know, we live in a time that we can really draw from different traditions, and I try for myself to really do it in a way that I kind of connect deeply to whatever traditions they are, and not just kind of like pull from here and there in a light kind of way, but to really take the tradition seriously, because I think part of the beauty of it is that these lineages really have carried wisdom for thousands of years, and it takes a certain amount of kind of depth and attention and commitment of staying with a practice, I think, to start to feel that potency of,
often you can try a practice, step away from it for a bit, revisit it down the road, and experience it in a whole new way, just because you're from a whole new space yourself.
Yeah, or you could go to one class or one meditation circle in a tradition and say, you know, either I like it or I don't. And it's like, how do you really know? Because there's such a deep tradition behind that. And I think, yeah, you're right. It has to be the right moment that you find the things that connect to you at the right times. But I really appreciate that we live at a time in the world where we have access to so many traditions and so many different ways of seeking that connection, because it feels almost like, I mean, this is a little off topic, but I got Lyme's disease last year, and it was really bad. And the herbs that I was taking, I was in Ireland at the time, and there was an outbreak of this Japanese knotweed, which is one of the herbs I was taking for the Lyme. And so I was hearing from everybody in town these two things. One was Lyme's disease is getting so bad, it's everywhere, you know, everybody's starting to have it. And then two, this Japanese knotweed, what are we going to do about it? And I was like, wow, that's so interesting that the two things that everyone's talking about are the challenge and the cure, the medicine. And so I'm trying to remember where that thought even started, but you know, I think a lot of the time these two things come together. So like at this moment in the world, we have the challenge of so much intensity, and I think a lot of people being maybe too engaged in the world, like we were overstimulated. But at the same time, we have this abundance of practices and tools for inner connection that is really also amplified at almost an equal kind of quantity. So it's interesting how things rise together.
Yeah. And it's great because it's almost like you just described the internet in a way, because you just have this cluster of information. I mean, I could upload this podcast and then it just gets flooded with Donald Trump stuff coming before and after it, you know? So there's just this overwhelming abundance of kind of like, I would just associate that Donald Trump politics stuff to Lyme's disease, and people just getting a little bit too uppity about the Lyme, but not really seeing the other side of it as well. But the internet is great for that reason, because then you can go explore and delve down deeper into any spiritual practice, such as the ones you alluded to earlier. And you can learn more about those, and you can start to communicate with people that are interested in those things as well. So it's almost like, it's just a very, very nice parallel to what you just described there with the Lymes. But how are you doing now? How are you feeling now?
I'm a lot better. I love that Japanese knotweed. Super
that everyone's going crazy about. Yeah.
No, but it's I healed it with a combination of Western medicine and herbal medicine, and again, kind of going back to the balance of things, you know. It's good to not have any kind of fundamentalist views about anything. That's a goal of mine in life. And so having Lyme disease was definitely a good reminder of that, because the allopathic medicine was super helpful and important to me, especially at the beginning when it was kind of a crisis. It was so helpful to be able to have antibiotics and deal with that. And so
now, do you find that having a strong intention, I mean, aside from there's plenty of studies on the placebo effect, but having a strong intention towards your own healing, do you find that aided in your ability to actually heal and recover quickly? I find a lot of people that do get Lyme's and do get all these other things, even cancer. I mean, it's a big one. But I was speaking with someone recently, and they were talking about someone they had known who just got cancer. She's in her 20s. And when someone says that to me, I think, okay, well, now's the time to take action, to make a shift, to make a change, to start to get healthier and better and move in that direction. But the person that was telling this to me was that all that the relatives of this individual woman were doing was just making her comfortable so that she can live out her remaining years in comfort. And when I hear that, I feel like it's giving up. I feel like it's as long as you're able to take the breath, you should have your intention. You should work towards finding a solution to get yourself healthier, to get yourself better, and not have so many paradigms, inside the box ways of thinking that this is the only way it is. Like, I have Lyme's, I'm sick. I am sick, write it down. I am sick. Or I have cancer. I am sick. I am dying, to have the the limitless perception of your pure potentiality, of anyone's pure potentiality, and being able to sort of align to that. So what you're saying is it's kind of like, did you have some sort of intention that supported you?
Well, I've dealt with illness kind of on and off a lot in life for whatever reason, something that comes up, things come up every few years for me. And I feel that every illness really has something to say. You know, it has some reason for being there. I don't think it's just, things don't just happen by accident in my experience. Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, for whatever reason that it happens, there's still some way to learn something through it.
Absolutely, yeah.
And for me, illness has been one of the biggest teachers and biggest gifts that I've had. Every time it comes up, there's something I'm not really giving the attention it needs, mm-hmm. you know, or like this last time with the Lyme disease, I just had been really pushing it with touring and with recording. I you know, have a lot of material in this body and mind, and I just mm-hmm. want to get it all out there and go to every country every year, and, you know, just kind of like keep
grab a megaphone and going. Just blast it to everyone. Yeah. And so it's easy to not listen when your body is telling you things, or your spirit too. Like I think at that time my body and my spirit both needed more space and some time to really rest and not be around so many people, and, you know, kind of take my space. And I wasn't really fully listening to that. And so, you know, illness really gave me a gift of slowing me down and taking me back to, it was really back to zero, because, mm-hmm. you know, for people, maybe some people who are listening have dealt with Lyme, and it's really hard because a lot of the time it goes into your brain. And so I had this experience of really not being able to use my brain for a few months. Mm-hmm. But it was interesting because it was like, wow, I've never found a meditation that could make me feel this spacious in my mind, you know? Yeah, it's almost like a Taoism type approach, you know, and then there's a quote that comes to mind. I think it's from Alexander Pope, or it was, how happy is the blameless vessel's lot, you know, essentially notes that, and how Taoism reveres those that are, you know, in our society, they wouldn't revere those people, but they have, you know, limited capacity, mental processing capacity, but they're so revered because they live in such a blissful state. Often when I go out and I'll see someone that has some sort of disability, I actually went for a walk recently, and I saw someone in a wheelchair, and I just sat there and watched them, and they were just, you know, it was probably in their 20s, completely in a wheelchair, and literally holding a rattle that a child would hold to entertain themselves. And I just sat there watching them, and I thought, you know, that is, some people could see that as torment, but you could, on the contrary, you could see that as total bliss. And then I reflected beyond that of the caregiver, and I thought the caregiver's experiencing bliss through this individual as well, because this person was, you know, wheeling the person around and all this stuff. And I just thought as a whole, kind of a blessed experience for the two of them, because they were out together in the park. And you can also see that caregiver as carrying a burden, but I didn't see that, you know, it's like I see those things, but they're not the reality to me. You know, they're not, they're not grounded in truth. Those things are just like misperceptions, in my opinion, that a lot of people hold on to, you know, with everything in the world, but with disease especially. So I think it's really important to just focus on, it's kind of cheesy, but focus on the good, see the good in everything, because it is there in everything. It just has to be perceived.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, and I think just the feeling that there is both sides in everything. There's a shadow in everything, and there's light in everything. There's, you know, the day and the night. There's this kind of balance within our human experience. And so, I mean, sometimes I think just focusing on the light can also be a challenge, because like I kind of feel that that's what I was doing before I got this illness last year. I was kind of just trying to be super positive. And that's why when you asked about the intention, I'm hesitant to even say that I had that intention of healing, because once I realized that the illness was really like the medicine I needed at that time, I really felt like I needed to kind of sink into that and allow it to take its own natural course. Mm-hmm. And obviously I was still really working to get better and taking medicines and and working with my healing. But I also think that sometimes that can be like a resistance to really fully experiencing what's happening. And so I think it can swing either way. It's like if we're too focused on the negative, then we could be missing something that could be kind of a silver lining. And if we're too focused on just getting the light, I think sometimes the shadow can kind of surprise us.
Now, I'm not sure in Buddhism, would that be referred to as taking the middle path, taking the middle way? You know,
yeah. And I think a lot of spiritual traditions all have that teaching in them, you know, and it's funny how, like, even within the chanting world, a lot of people will translate the word guru to mean moving from darkness to light. And I kind of have always just like felt a little funny with it, because the word actually guru contains the syllable for darkness and light together within one word. And so to me, that's more like it's a representation of the middle path. And when you describe somebody who has a great deal of wisdom, you describe them as a guru. And to me, that's like someone who can really hold the darkness and the light and experience the fullness of reality without resistance to either one or attachment to either outcome. So that's just kind of an example of that from within the spiritual world, of how we think, okay, we're leaving the darkness, leaving the shadow and moving into the light, which can be a nice image. But I think it's also important to feel that sense of being able to really exist with the fullness of the spectrum.
Yeah, all realms of experience that you could have. Yeah. There's someone, I was listening to some podcast, and I think it might have been Paul Chek. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but he's heavily into Buddhism and other things. But he described as basically existence is the imbalance, is God creating imbalance. Because if there was just balance and perfection, if there was just perfection, stillness, then there would be nothing, right? So it's like the illness is an act of God, is a will of God. It's in an imbalanced way, but in order to allow you to have that experience. So it's really interesting. And you perceive these things much differently than a lot of other people would, and you sort of sit back from a seat of awareness and kind of examine them. A lot of people don't, and they really kind of, like what you were saying, is like they get caught in the darkness of it, in the illness of it, or too much in the light and too focused on that, but not really experiencing both sides of things, which is the whole point, to have that realm of experience. It's almost like to take that water slide of life and just, go for it. Actually, even a lot of people I talk to, they play video games and stuff. I kind of say, like, it's like playing a video game with cheat codes on, and you don't want to do that because then it's just boring. It's like, what's the point? If anyone's ever done that, it's just, there's no point to it. It's almost like you want to play the game normally, experience all the experiences, take it all in, because that's the point of hitting that start button. You know what I mean? Yeah. Starting up that game.
Yeah. And that's where I think spirituality can at sometimes be an escape from life. And it can also, like meditation, just using that as an example, I think meditation could be a way that we kind of escape from experiencing life. And at the same time, it can be a space where we really go to experience the depth of life. So it's kind of like many things. I think it's really what our approach is and how we're relating to the practice itself.
That's lovely. And just before we kind of get to wrapping things up, I just had a couple more questions for you. But I know that you have Many Moons course happening right now, and you have your KickStarter as well. So I just wanted to take a minute, if you could just kind of highlight what exactly that's all about, if anyone's interested in checking it out. I put all the links and the resources and all your information in the page or the description of this podcast, so people can always just go to it and reference that. But I'm going to be putting the link to your KickStarter, because I think that's still going on for the next 2 weeks, if I'm not mistaken.
It is, yeah. Okay. It's, I think, about 10 days left.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what is the Many Moons course, and what is the KickStarter all about in relation to your new album?
Yeah. Well, the Many Moons course is a women's course, and it's also, I really kind of like to make it very clear that it's not just for much as it's for anybody who feels like that embodiment of the feminine, because I know that, there are a lot of people on the gender spectrum who I want to feel welcome within that community. And so it's really for people who feel connected to that feminine and want to connect deeper to it. And we do a lot of work with the hormonal systems and balancing these systems that are specific to women's bodies. So that's an aspect of the course that is kind of specific to women. But it's a community of women from all over the world. That's the thing I love most about doing it. You know, it's about 100 women just from many, many different countries. And we meet every week and have a forum and a discussion going throughout this full cycle of 28 days, a full moon cycle. And this is my third time running this course, and it just feels like a really special way to reconnect to a sense of community, because I think that's another thing that is kind of missing in our daily life and culture. And it's very natural, I think, for women to gather, especially at important phases of the moon, and to practice meditation, to sing, to share our experiences and reflect on our experiences. So that's what I try to offer in this course. And there's also quite a bit about you know, herbs and different self-care practices that have been kind of lost. I think there have been things in society that have developed about women's bodies that make us feel kind of ashamed of different aspects of our cycles and our women's systems. And for that reason, I think a lot of really valuable wisdom isn't given to women that would be great if it was just given to us, you know, when you start becoming a woman, when you start moving out of childhood and into adulthood. I think there are things about how to be in our bodies and how to care for our bodies that many of us don't learn. And I didn't really come across many of these practices until later in my life. I mean, I'm still pretty early in my life, but, you know, in my 20s, I started discovering all of these herbal and medicinal and kind of self-care practices from different traditions that have really changed my health and my experience of being in a woman's body. So I felt really motivated to share that through some platform, and this course has been a really, really fun way to gather as women and to, you know, reconnect to some of those practices.
No, it sounds amazing, and I think it's something. Maybe you could do something for men too at some point.
Yeah, totally. I don't know as much about.
I don't know how that would be structured. Maybe we could work together on it or something.
For sure, yeah. No, I think it's really needed for both, you know, for both men and women. I think it's really important to have time where we can connect about the things that aren't so easy for us to talk to each other about, because we are living different realities in certain ways. And so it's really, I think it's really special when men have that chance to really connect about the masculine and how to embody the masculine. Like you were saying about how to also integrate the feminine while really holding that strong masculine as well. And I think a lot of men would enjoy and benefit from a platform to have those kinds of conversations.
Yeah, I think it would be great. I think just getting back to that whole thing of fear as well, I think a lot of men have that fear to reveal that vulnerability within themselves. And then on the contrary, there's a lot of men that have completely gone to the feminine side, and I've seen that is quite prevalent in our society now. And it's like, where's all the men? Like, what are you all doing? You know, like, go out and chop some wood or something, man. Like, it's like they don't. So, and I think it's because of all the devices and all, like, the just staying indoors and not getting outside and not, you know, hunting and gathering and doing all these different things, which even women used to do, you know, hunter-gatherers as well. So it's like, you know, the yeah, just the technological age that we're in seems to be limiting people in that regard.
Yeah, definitely.
So do you have any upcoming, I know we mentioned, or we talked about right at the beginning of this podcast, but you had mentioned the upcoming concert that you'll be doing in November of Toronto. Are you touring right now over this year?
Yeah, so I'm doing a tour in South America and Central America, the US and Canada. So really the whole continent. I'm starting in August and going through until November.
Okay.
So I will be doing lots, going to lots of different places coming up soon. And part of that is sharing this new album that you asked about, but I kind of went down the women's course route. But this new album is coming out to people through the KickStarter in August, and then it'll be released to everyone else in September. So I'm touring during that whole time. It's a nice balance of things because I also am producing this music, so I spend a lot of hours at the computer.
Yeah, I think I saw some of your Instagram stories of you just like showing the editing process, and I'm like, it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. Yeah. But it's also amazing. This is my first album that I'm ever doing where I'm producing the whole thing. And I'm also doing it without a record label. So everything about it is just different than what I've experienced in the past.
Do you find that record labels tend to intercede and try and guide the direction of the album when you create them?
Definitely. And I've only worked with one record label, and I've worked with them for the last 5 years. And I love them, the company Spirit Voyage, and they produce a lot of really great music, and they've been just incredibly helpful to giving me my career, really. Mm-hmm. It was their idea, not mine, for me to make music full time. And so I'm really grateful to them. But at the same time, it is a collaboration, and they do own the music. And so it's natural when it's their project that they have opinions about it. And every idea I have, I kind of talk it over and talk it through with them. So when these songs first started coming to me, I knew that they needed something very different. I felt like this album needed to be just me and the music for as long as that needed to happen. And then I would slowly start inviting other musicians in, kind of as I started to hear this, like in my mind, I hear a violin there. And then I'd call my friend Bogdan in Mexico, who's just this incredible violinist, mm-hmm. plays with like so much, I don't know if you've seen Mozart in the Jungle, but he plays with the blood.
Okay. Okay.
So yeah, he just plays with so much heart and feeling. And so yeah, this way of doing it really gave me so much freedom to kind of bring in the musicians and the artists who I admire so much. Like, this album is basically, if when you're given a chance to just make your dream album with your dream people, it's brought me to tears so many times as they would send me the recordings, or as I'd just be listening to a mix with all of these people together. I almost couldn't believe that there was a recording with that combination of people. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's been definitely a project that is very much close to my heart and very personally satisfying to create.
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned that you hear like a violin, or you'll hear certain tunes or instruments. Do you know, from a philosophical point of view, I'm sure you're familiar with the phrase the Akashic records, or even some people call it DMT realm or anything like that. Do you find that these things already exist? You merely just need to, again, open yourself up to it, allow that sort of to come through, and then the fact that you're producing this yourself, it really does give you that total control to kind of pluck from this realm and then bring it all together. And now you have this piece that's, it's like your pure manifestation of your own vision, your own, and that could be why it's bringing you to tears, just because of how it's unfolding in that way. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And I really don't know how it works. I know the experience of it. Mm-hmm. And I think what you're describing totally makes sense to my experience. I always feel, people ask me a lot where the songs come from, how what my writing process is like. And it's really interesting because I feel it like what you're describing. I'll start to hear something in my mind, and the only way I can describe it is that it feels like when you hear music off in the distance and you can't really fully make it out, but you hear far away or something, and then you can choose to walk towards it. And to explore it more and to get a fuller experience. And so for me, it's like when the songs start coming to me, I have to just drop everything and start walking towards it. And then slowly I start to hear it more and more. And I can hear, sometimes I try something that's not it. And I feel, no, that's not.
Yeah, it's just no, wrong.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Next.
So
yeah.
Then, you know, you go in the other direction, and I can feel kind of when it's right.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I think the freedom of being able to do this album really on my own. And it's funny because it's not at all on my own. It's been an amazing experience of community, but also it's had a lot of balance between like a lot of solitude and personal freedom, and then a lot of really the best part of community and collaboration as well.
Mm-hmm. It's like when you were saying it's almost off in the distance. There's a lot of writers and creative people that believe in the muses, and this is like a kind of a Greek philosophy thing. So you kind of like, you almost pray to the muses and allow that to just, and you're opening up to whatever they're offering you and whatever you work with, and then you can sort of transmute that into whatever you can in this plane. And it's really nice that you're kind of reflective of that, and you understand that process. And it's almost the whole part about just going about your whole life is just hearing that music off in the distance and knowing which path to take with everything you do, with all decisions. And sometimes there's actually I can't remember which philosopher it was, but he used to basically say, like, he would have a voice in the back of his head. I'm not sure if he called it his demon, which was a very interesting name for it, but he would basically ask it a question, and it would just simply say no. It just get yes or no, no. And then if it said no, he'd just do something else, and just keep asking it. And if it just kept saying no, you just do something else. And that's sort of finding a way that, you know, to follow that stream or to follow that path. So it's really interesting how it comes forth for you in music and the creation of your music, your whole process. And I see that it's very reflective when I listen to your music. Like I can pick up on that. I know a lot of people probably listen to it and they just hear it's just this lovely, beautiful tone, this beautiful music, but I feel as if it's been weaved in some way when I listen to it from something that I don't understand, but it's been weaved.
Yeah, and I don't understand it any more than you do.
Well, that's great. And I'm not alone. Well, I don't actually have any other questions for you right now, and I'm sure we've gone on for a while. Maybe we could have a follow-up call some other time, but actually, do you mind if I get Grace in here? Because she wanted to say hi.
Yeah, for sure.
She's right there.
Hi.
And, hello.
How are you?
Yeah, there we go.
How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm like excited for you to come visit Toronto in November.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. It's definitely one of my favorite places to come. I feel like it's always such a sweet spot, and really nice to come.
It's at the church, right? That you performed at.
I think it's at the same place, yeah.
Nice. Here, this is my little guy, Alfie. I was telling you that he listens to Antarjamni, like it's his lullaby.
That's so sweet.
So I'll sing him the song like when we go to bed, or I'll like him, and he'll legit like fall asleep.
That's amazing.
Say hello.
That's the worst part of being a touring musician, is that you can't have animals. That's the only downside. So I just enjoy watching other people love their animals.
Yeah, we definitely do. But really nice to see you. I don't want to take any more of your time, but looking forward to the podcast and seeing you, and just like watching your development on Instagram, and it'd be nice.
Thank
you. Sending you love.
Lots of love. Nice to see you. See you in November.
Yes.
So that was nice.
Yeah, definitely. It's so nice to see you guys.
Yeah. So, but yeah, did you want to share anything else before we hop off? Anything that anyone should check out? Or I think we covered quite a bit, but
I think we covered it all.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So I'll probably see you again soon, and otherwise, we'll stay in touch online and everything. But looking forward to your concert. So we'll see you that in November as well.
Awesome.
Otherwise,
looking forward to it.
Thank you for taking this time. Really appreciate it.
Of course. My pleasure. Thanks for having the time to take.
No problem. All right. Thank you. Take care.
Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.